Good afternoon. Hope everyone had a great lunch. Welcome back to the Alpha Laval room, where we're going to hear about a framework for sustainability and community impact, something that's increasingly important to not only beer, but our society. I'd like to welcome Marthijs Heuperman from Brewery and James Perrin from Sustainability and Community Specialist. That's not your business.
It's not my business, that's what I am.
Big round of applause, and I'll hand over to them both.
Are we on? Yep, thank you. Welcome everyone. Just before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Thank you. We're here today to, I'll just get this clicker working, to talk about the subject of sustainability and community. A little bit of background on ourselves. I immigrated to Australia when I was 7 years old, and as you can tell by my name, anything with an I, Jane, it makes me a Dutchie. But I moved from the flatlands to Australia when I was 7. I had parents who were very interested in the mountains and the outdoors, and I find myself now living in Bright. I have an identity that links very much to the outdoors and the mountains, and I'm very passionate about protecting the environment. That very much is something that I like to spend time in. So, James, yourself, what's your why and what brings you here today?
Thanks, Marthijs. Yeah, so hello everyone, my name's James. I guess professionally my background is in chemical and environmental engineering, and I started my career in the brewing industry with Lion in New Zealand, working on sustainability projects within the manufacturing realm, so water, energy, wastewater treatment. Moved into the brewing team, and then moved over here. Well, I was originally from here, moved back to Australia to start working with Stone & Wood, where I led their packaging team before then leading all of their sustainability and community initiatives. I finished up with Stone & Wood 2021, and since then I've been freelancing and consulting as a sustainability and community specialist or freelancer, and I also currently work with impact investors to identify environmental and social impact opportunities. So that's what I do, but that wasn't the answer to your question, which is what is my why? My why is that I guess when I was, like so many people, when I was younger, I just spending a lot of time outdoors cultivated a connection with the outdoors and nature, and that's something that really infiltrated what I've chosen to do with my career, and that's what led me to, even as a graduate engineer within a brewing company, to start to carve out a niche in the sustainability realm, because I was just so passionate about, working towards positive social and environmental outcomes.
Fantastic. We've shared a bit about ourselves. How many of you have taken a flight in the last year on a plane? Raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you actually offset the carbon that flight generated. Yeah, probably about half of you. It's good to see, because people are becoming more aware of their carbon footprint and making sure that they take actions in order to ensure that the world we live in is not going to heat up too fast and too quick. I participated in a leadership course a couple of months ago, and there was one slide that stood out in the course. We were talking about climate adaptation, and this particular slide was presented by a gentleman from Agriculture Victoria. Now the slide is a map of Australia from the last 110 years of the maximum temperatures that have been reached. Today's discussion isn't about climate change as such, but have a look at the last 10 to 15 years of what's happening in Australia. We're getting really, really warm, and this is being impacted by our actions. There's been a lot of talk within the sessions that I've been going to the last day or two. It's all about growth, it's about profit, which is great. We need to sustain our businesses to be where we are today. However, we do consume, we do continue to add to the massive amounts of materials that we have to consume to make our product, but it does add to how we change the climate. So the discussion around sustainability is important. Our consumers are choosing to push back and only buy products that have a focus on sustainability. So what we're discussing today, the purpose of today's presentation is for James to give us some insights into the framework models that can be applied to your businesses to ensure that we focus on a very important topic. Many of you may have heard of the triple bottom line concept. It was coined about 30 years ago. Focuses on not just profit, but also people and planet. Very important factors that we should all start to consider within our businesses. It's not just about the bottom line. It does sustain, obviously money sustains what we do within our business, but there is a pushback on the other elements as well. Life's busy, where we've got so much on, it's hard to make decisions around what the key goals and challenges are that you're choosing to take in life and with our businesses. We feel overwhelmed, but thankfully sustainability is one of those things that it's driving key decisions within our companies. So, as a business owner or as a line manager, start to think about what matters to you in terms of what you're achieving on a day-to-day, and where to start the journey. Many of you probably have already started looking at particular initiatives within your businesses, but there is some frameworks that can be considered, and they may not all apply to your business, but James, let's kick off with some of the things that can be looked at.
All right, great. Thank you, Marthijs. So, Marthijs didn't mention, but he's the leader of the IBA Sustainability Project Group. And so he's kind of hosting this session, and to start with, anchoring us in, a bit of a personal story and why we're doing something is a really important place to start before we just jump straight into the, this is what you should do. Intentionality is really, really important with sustainability and community impact. Why you do something is just as, if not more important than what you actually do, right? And so the purpose of this session is to provide some guides, some overarching frameworks and concepts about what you can do, what different frameworks and business models around impact look like, and how they can be applied, and particularly how they can be applied to the brewing industry. Since leaving the brewing industry, I've worked with a number of companies and industries in other sectors, and often if I get approached by a company or a founder that's looking to implement a sustainability or community program or initiative, often they're jumping to the what, and often it's based on something they've heard or something they've seen a competitor do. Sometimes they'll come to me and say, what offset should I buy? How do I measure my carbon footprint? And it's like, let's try to peel it back a little bit. Why? What's your why? What's your intentionality? So I'll keep coming back to that. Why is sustainability and community important? There's a lot of rational reasons that make a lot of business sense. Things like staff attraction and retention. People want to work for businesses that are benefiting to, the society and planet, or at least avoiding harm, avoiding the negative impacts of running their business. You're going to get brand authenticity and reputation from doing good things, obviously. Like as Marthijs mentioned, consumers are increasingly looking for this kind of stuff in the products they buy. There are efficiencies, there are productivities, lowering your water, your energy, your waste usage. You're going to cut down costs. They're actually profitable or things that will improve your bottom line. Risk mitigation is a really important one. We may come back to this, but Marthijs showed those images of the country temperatures over the last 100 or so years in our industry, very agriculturally linked. As we continue to see extreme weather events, droughts, Australia's very, very used to droughts. It could potentially be harder to secure supply of ingredients. Where I live, over the border in northern New South Wales, in the last 5 years, we've experienced 2 floods, bushfires and COVID lockdowns in 5 years. So, disruptions to supply, social license to operate. We operate in an industry that could potentially be seen as quite harmful and damaging from a community point of view if we're not managing our, how we're interacting and how our products are being used in the community. So there's a lot of rational reasons as to why it's important to take this into consideration with your business. And then there's also the irrational reasons, which is it's really just something that we know to be right. Coming back to what's our why? What do we care about? what's unique to us, what are our values, and what do we want to positively try to influence through our business. There will be time for some questions at the end as well. So any questions or thoughts or discussions, please jot them down, and we'll try to get to them. Okay, so this is my lens on overarching concepts or different frameworks for types of impact business models. This is not, some published definitive list. This is my take on things. And the reason I present this is because I mentioned before, sometimes I get approached by businesses who want to jump the gun and go straight to one thing. But I'm trying to offer a perspective that there are lots of different things that you can do, and lots of different businesses will use different approaches to approaching sustainability and community impact. So the first is impact through your products or services. So probably less relevant for our industry. I think there are still some examples, but this is, you can imagine if you're a solar panel company, right? Your product, and through the sale and use of your product, has a direct environmental benefit, right? Or if you run healthcare facilities or whatever it is. So impact through products or services. Another framework is who you employ. So do you have staff development and training, other employee share schemes? Are you trying to employ and target people from undeserved backgrounds? Who you employ is an impact framework. Your supply chain, who you're buying from. Are you preferencing suppliers that have certain credentials? Are you buying from certain local regions? Are you preferencing sale in certain local regions? So your supply chain is really important, and I think particularly one that brewers are really uniquely positioned to continue to drive. I think Bernard, I wasn't here yesterday, but I read the article about his speech, and he mentioned he can't think of any other industry that is so linked to agriculture and manufacturing and has experienced growth in the last decade and operates in both cities and regional areas. That's quite amazing. So supply chain is a really key one, I think, for the brewing industry. There's profit sharing and donation models. That could be charitable giving, or it could be like one-for-one donation models. Ownership and equity models, so employee share schemes or not-for-profit ownership. The most extreme example, Patagonia in the US, the founder recently signed over ownership to an environmental not-for-profit. And then another one, which I don't think really stands on its own, but links into the other ones, is advocacy and engagement models. So how you engage and advocate for certain causes. The reason why I put a bit of an asterisk on that one is that that's where I think you can get kind of caught up with greenwashing by saying certain things and trying to do certain things and trying to advocate for certain things, but not actually backing it up with what you do or having a defined cause behind it. So those are my overarching different types of frameworks. What I think that looks like in the brewing industry, just before jumping back to that point I'm going to keep coming back to, is intentionality is really important. So one way that I like to think about intentionality is ask the 3 C's. Is what you're doing core to your business? Is it convenient to your business? Or is it contribution? So for core, for example, that would be whatever you're doing in this impact business model, let's call it. If you stop doing it, your business would essentially cease to operate, or at least cease to operate as it is. So again, maybe not so relevant to the brewing industry, but if you're a vegan food company and that's your kind of impact thesis, and you stop selling vegan products, then you basically changed your business model. So that would be core. Where I think most brewers probably sit, or most in the brewing industry, I say brewers and the brewing industry because it's not just brewers here, is contribution. So we have our business and our kind of product and service and what we offer, but we're also trying to contribute in other ways, and that's fine. And there's ways that you can contribute. And then this piece where greenwashing comes up is it convenient? Is it oh, look, we've used far less resources, or our carbon emissions are lower than they were 2 years ago, but really, secretly, that's because we're selling less products than we did 3 years ago. That's trying to claim environmental or social benefits because it's convenient, is not really coming back to that intentionality piece. So the why you do something and really articulating and communicating that why is really important.
Actually, James, it makes me think of a lot of the data that some of the businesses are collecting nowadays you'll for example say if you've got PV on your roof, you might have collected X 100 kilowatts of data that of energy that you've offset from not buying from the grid, and a lot of those platforms will convert that into you've saved you've planted the equivalent of 200 trees or whatever it might be. If you're not doing that with intent, as James is indicating, that if you're selling that message to your consumers, is the intent correct? Is it the right thing to be saying?
Yeah, that's right. And I think where the greenwashing particularly comes in is when it's coming from a place of, and you can smell it, you can see it, right? When it's coming from a place of, we're trying to leverage this to sell more product. That's when we know that as general humans, as customers, we can tell, versus if it's to try to advocate for a certain cause because we've defined the thing that we care about and that we're trying to actually impact, and I'll get to impact thesis in a minute, then that is when it's really clear. That's when it aligns. So what I think, taking those frameworks and applying them to a bit more specific examples for the brewing industry, so products with a social or environmental impact. So probably a bit more limited with our industry, but an example here may be non-alcoholic beer. You could make a case for, well, by making non-alcoholic beer, we're contributing to healthy drinking habits or mental health or whatever the reason for producing that product is. We've got employee models. So this can be quite varying. Employee models could be inclusion, where we're going to try to hire and train up people from a certain part of society. Maybe we're trying to get more women into the brewing industry in certain roles. Maybe we're trying to hire people from traditionally undeserved backgrounds, or maybe it's around training and employee ownership. There's a whole different range of things you can do under employee models. Sustainable manufacturing is one that we've probably spoken most about in our industry before, but looking at our water, electricity, gas, wastewater, trying to reduce those and be more efficient, significantly more efficient than industry benchmarks. That's one that obviously will continue to be important in our industry. Supply chain models, I mentioned before, I think we're really uniquely positioned to leverage supply chain impact business models. So this can be quite varying. It could be sustainable agriculture. I know we've had Certified Sustainable up here talking on a panel. It could be, preferencing suppliers who have certain sustainability or community standards. It could be preferencing suppliers or customers in a local region, a local geographic region. There's many ways to impact your supply chain, and implementing processes and practices around that is really important as part of building out the framework. There's charitable giving programs, so this could be everything from donating a portion of proceeds, like 1% for the planet, so charitable giving in the dollars. It could be volunteering, having a volunteering KPIs and volunteering leave for your team. It could be karma kicks, so donating via product. Businesses that we've seen in other industries leverage this really well. Is like Who Gives a Crap, who donate 50% of their profits. There's other companies that do like a one-for-one product donation model. There's some shoe companies that do that. So charitable giving programs. And then, advocacy and engagement programs. So like I said before, I think this one is really great when you have a certain cause or impact thesis that you are trying to advocate for, and then you're directing people towards that, not towards yourself so much to say, hey, look how good we are, buy from us. It's, hey, this is something we really care about, this is why, and this is how you can support it. So something with this is, what I'm trying to do here is show that you don't just have to do one thing. Just because you see another brewer who's great in terms of their sustainable manufacturing processes doesn't mean you have to do that too. There's a lot of different things that you can do, and really a lot of it is subjective. It's going to come back to, what do you care about? What are your company values? And also this question at the bottom, what are you uniquely positioned to influence? So if you're a smaller regional brewer, perhaps you're really important about preferencing local suppliers and your local customers and hiring locally, and maybe that's stuff that you already kind of do, and that would fall in that maybe convenient bucket, and you actually really want to formalize that. So how do we create a why around it and some policies and programs such that, no, this is actually part of our business governance. Maybe you're really passionate about donating to a charitable cause. And so it's like, okay, well, the reason we want to do that is because of this, really articulating that, and then putting some efforts behind that. We're going to, maybe it's every quarter or every year, we're going to brew a beer and get that charity in and engage with them and donate a portion of the proceeds, right? So there might be some of this stuff that you're doing already ad hoc. You might want to focus on one in particular and go, that's our thing, I'm really passionate about that. Or you might say, actually, I want to do a little bit of all of those. And so what I help do, and what I've seen businesses do really well, is take what you might already be doing, just ad hoc, building upon it and going, what more do we want to do in this? And then how do we build that into our business in terms of our policies, programs, and business plan?
And often the starting point, James touched on values, is having a discussion within your businesses around what are your values, what do you stand for. I know at Bright Brewery, as an example, we have 3 core values: active, authentic, and sustainable. So that sustainable element it's part of everything we do. When we make a business decision, we go back to our values, and that helps us make decisions.
So I'm mindful of time here. I'm watching the clock. So in terms of implementing, so that was kind of start with why. Why do you want to do something? Then there's the what, of what can you be doing? And then this is kind of the how. So how do we do it? That's the laser. Sorry, Marthijs, almost got you there. So coming back to that, define your impact thesis or theory of change. These are kind of buzzwords, and they can be a theory of change, for example, can be a statement right through to a multi-day workshop that's 20 pages long. But really what this is getting at too is your why. And often it's structured in a way, or a way to think about it is, if we blank by doing blank, then we will contribute blank, right? So, what's your impact thesis? If we preference supporting suppliers that have certain credentials in our industry by putting in policies and programs and engaging with those suppliers, then it will contribute to an industry that is more robust and focused towards social and environmental outcomes. Whatever your impact thesis is, start with that why and define it, because it's really important. And define it and refine it. It might change over time, but it's really important to start with why. Then develop a strategy. So, that's that purpose, the why. The vision would be the what. So that's our why. What do we want to see then? So maybe it's in 3 years' time, we want to have implemented X amount of programs and reviewed this many suppliers or given this much to charity in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. That's what we want the what to look like. And then that mission piece is the how. How are we going to get there? And that's when you start to chunk it down to planning activities. So, okay, well, if we want to achieve this in 5 years or this in 1 year, what do we need to do in the next quarter? Who needs to be doing what in the next month? What do we want to start with? So really starting to develop that, putting that plan into action. And then implement a way to monitor your progress. So you've created the plan, started to implement it. How do we review it? How do we know whether we're on track or off track? That could just be we've got activities on a Gantt sheet for people to do. It could be we've actually developed some metrics. We want to measure our water, energy and waste, and now we want to know where we are versus last year. So we're monitoring our progress. So knowing whether you're on track to your own plans, and then you can even benchmark against other industry benchmarks. And then how do we embed that into our business practices, into our business governance? So this is where it might be, okay, who's going to review this? Best practice would be, senior management or board have it as part of their agenda. Maybe it's built into, people's development plans, and it's going to be reviewed and embedded in the business in a consistent basis. And it could be certifications. Certifications aren't the only thing. They can be helpful. There's a number of certifications that I think are relevant to the industry and show different examples. Oh God, I'm really struggling with this clicker.
Check.
There we go. Okay, so here's a few examples that I think are relevant and interesting. So on the left, we have B-Corp. So I'm familiar with B-Corp, so I'll come back to that. That's one that I've used quite a lot. But B-Corp is a framework that's actually applied to all businesses and all industries all around the world. So it's an overarching kind of business governance framework, and that looks at your governance, your workers, your community, your environment, and your customers. And it's a really useful tool, whether you want to certify or not. It's a free tool that you can go online and start to ask you questions around certain things you do and don't do, and you'll start to just dig under the hood of what are things that we could do, what do we care about, where do we score well, where do we think we can improve. 1% for the Planet is one example. It's not the only example. It's one example of a charitable giving program, and they've got policies and programs around how you can give charitably. Fair trade, perhaps not so relevant to this industry unless you brew with coffee or tea, but it's an example of a certification scheme around labour practices and ensuring that we're no human rights abuses. Climate Active is Australia's carbon neutral certification. We've heard from and spoken about Certified Sustainable, which is an agricultural growing certification. And then I've even put up the Indie Seal because if you think about it, at its core, the IBA and Certified Independent, the impact thesis is we're supporting Australian-owned, Australian-made, Australian-manufactured, and all the money is going back into our industry, staying in our country, rather than the profits going to corporations offshore, right? So there's a really important impact thesis there as well. But it comes back to the why, So these certifications may be helpful in helping guide you towards what you're interested in. They may be helpful for you uncovering what maybe more you could do. They may be helpful if you go right through the certification process of any of them to embed them within your business practice. Like I said, you don't have to do any of them, but they are guides, things that you can start to look at.
And some of them are very time consuming. As a business, Bright Brewery, we've tipped our toe into some of these buckets just to see what the framework looks like, maybe get an initial score to see how we would rank if we were to try and pursue that certification. And yeah, you need to put time and resource into it. It's not easy, but once again, if you've got the intent and you want to do it, there are plenty of options to look at.
All right. Marthijs is going to talk us through a few examples from Bright before we open it up to questions.
Yeah, so a couple of practical examples. Given we've looked at the framework, at Bright Brewery, we don't really have a structural framework around what we do with our sustainability goals, but we dabble with lots of things. We have a business owner who loves to ski, for example. We live near the mountains. We learned about POW, which is Protect Our Winters. So we created a beer and branded it, and we market that to our consumers, and it's been really successful. We take proceeds from the sale of this product and we give back to POW, who then work in the advocacy space in terms of promoting reduction in greenhouse emissions for climate change. So in a practical sense, in our brewery as such, all our lighting's LED. We had someone come through and do an energy audit. We picked the low-lying fruit from the results from that energy audit. Everything's on sensors. Replacement of light switches with sensors is an immediate way to reduce some of your energy consumption. We looked at our waste streams extensively. We try and separate our waste into nice clean streams so that when we talk with our waste contractor, they charge us less to collect waste streams that are already sorted. So that's another means of reducing your costs.
Just on this one, I'll just jump in really quickly because this just brings back memories for me. So when I first started at Stone & Wood a number of years ago, we just by chance, just by general practice, we had bottle wastage from the bottling line, it just naturally sorted on its own because there was glass just going into bins. Then over in the brew house area, we had cardboard from hot boxes. We had different waste streams that were just naturally already segregated, and then we would go out the back and chuck them all in a big yellow bin, and they'd get mixed up, and then that truck would come and pick it up and take it to a sorting facility for them to sort through it all and separate it again. And it was through any undoing on our behalf. It was just happened to be how it was at the time. And so if we had, if we weren't at the time, but if we were tracking our waste numbers, we would have been able to say, oh, look, tick, we're recycling. Our materials are going to recycling. But if we actually go back to that intentionality piece, we're trying to really do the right thing and be custodians of where our waste is going. starting to understand, well, actually, this waste stream is going here, and this waste stream is going here, and this waste stream is going here. So we can actually keep those separate and just engage with different recycling contractors on different waste streams. And just that little bit of effort made a huge difference.
Another pet hate of mine is the malt bag. James can talk to this one as well. We are thankfully at a stage within our business where we're able to purchase a grain silo, and I think we'll probably see a reduction in our number of malt bags, probably by about 80%. We've tried all sorts of things in terms of engaging with the community, getting them to pick up malt bags and use them for kindling, collecting grass scraps, etc., etc. But that stream and flood of malt bags just keeps on coming. So this is a solution that will definitely reduce that for us. Thinking about 8 years ago when I started with Brewery, we did a lot of things on paper. The internet came along, and we've just seen a massive reduction in the amount of forms and paperwork that we would usually fill in by hand. You walk around the brewery now, there's technology everywhere, from signing in for a shift to logging brew logs and things like that. It's all done on laptops and so forth. So it's a small thing, but once again, start small. That's where you need to begin. Data. It's the new currency. We have just recently put on a whole bunch of new CT metering, so we can start to see what pieces of equipment use what amounts of energy during the day. We can see what our base load is at night when we're not brewing. Even in our venue, when the head chef comes in the morning, you can see this spike. 10 o'clock, it's flatline, and then bang, they turn the pizza oven on. Could they maybe turn that on, not on full, turn it on half? Look at ways, potentially, if there's a piece of equipment that you haven't got a VSD on, maybe there's means of reducing that energy consumption. So all those little bits and pieces. If you don't know what's happening with your equipment, you can't see the data, obviously you can't make a decision on whether it's a good piece of equipment to keep or change. And that's a bit of that greenwashing we were talking about before. the energy numbers and how they convert to trees planted and CO2 saved. Not so much greenwashing, but their numbers and how you choose to market them is different. We have a marketing department who, as part of our sustainability core value, they tell everybody what we do. And in terms of our business owner, very keen on reusing, recycling. We practice what we preach. Come to our venue, you'll see we reuse things all the time. Old barrels, pallets, kegs. Just get innovative. I mean, there's a multitude of ways that you can make your venue reflect your sustainability values. James talked about karma kegs, community kegs. We're doing that on a monthly basis as well, and we love to give that money back to organisations who are very appreciative of it, but it also helps grow that connection that's really important between your business and your community. Here's another little scenario. I'm a keen cyclist, and I'm noticing on my local rides, one of the stretches of road had an immense amount of rubbish on it. I came up with this idea that we could use malt bags to pick up that rubbish. So put a call out to community who wants to help me. Every year we do it, and we get usually a core of 10 to 12 people that come and help pick up rubbish for a day, which is really, really good. We put a story in their local newspaper. It helps promote, once again, our values and brings a bit of a framework to what we do. We grow seedlings. We grow some of our vegetables that we use for food in our kitchen. Once again, reducing the amount of miles and the carbon footprint of what we do. And just as a final thing, and a bit of a lead-in for James to talk to as well, Pactex, probably majority of you use them to connect your cans together. It was a frustration of mine, and also Evan, our sales manager, he'd be calling on our wholesale customers, and they were saving these, giving them back to him, bringing them back to us. We were trying to reuse them, relabel them. But meanwhile, Pactex is still importing all this virgin plastic from America. We've now, I think, just through some inquiries through the IBA, as well as discussions with Pactex and Visi, I'm told that there's machines arriving very soon that will be working on processing plastic pallets within the Visi plant in Sydney to remake and close that loop. And Melbourne, sorry. Thank you, Evan. So that's a really great success story on the sustainability front, just from starting a small discussion around a problem that we had or that we saw within the industry and within our own business. So.
Cool. Thanks, Marthijs. Yeah, I think these are great examples to show that, like, I mean, I started with concepts and they probably sounded big, like impact thesis and here are certifications, but starting small and being consistent is really important. You don't have to do everything overnight. Define what you want to do and then just start building a plan and chipping away at it. You know, I'm sure you didn't do all of those initiatives in 1 year. That would have been overwhelming, but how starting small with one thing can lead to another, can lead to another. That PECTech example is a great one because it actually led to an industry collaborative trial. IBA got involved, the Sustainability Project Group, which has ultimately led to investment, like actual investment of machinery in the country, which is an amazing outcome. So just quickly, a few further resources. So the IBA is a great resource. You know, there's the Sustainability Project Group. You know, we've had obviously a crazy couple of years, and sometimes things like sustainability and community kind of fall into the back, off the priority list. But there's a lot of momentum in this space. There's a lot of interest in the group. I'm hearing a lot of interest from other companies, other breweries, other industries. The IBA is really behind sustainability. They've got, the IBA has received grant funding from government in the past. There's sponsorships that are potentially lined up. So there's a lot of momentum behind this group. So if you're interested, reach out to Marthijs and the Sustainability Project Group if you have any ideas, if you're looking for any resources. It's a great industry collaborative group. In the past, the IBA has received funding to put out some publications. So you might remember there was like a best practice kind of starting guide and a benchmarking tool. So again, there's some more momentum coming behind that, and there's some more publications coming soon. We're going to be putting out a packaging and recycling guide, which Kylie's not in the room, which is good because that's overdue because of me. So I've been helping Kylie on that, but she's waiting on me. But that's coming very soon. And then, we're looking at potentially another one, which is how to approach carbon measurement and management for breweries of different sizes. So there's more resources coming out from an industry perspective. There's also the Brewers Association in the US already does some of this stuff as well. So you can, if you're a member or if you know someone who's a member, you can find they've got benchmarking guides, they've got best practice guides for wastewater, trade waste. It's something we haven't talked about. We probably don't have too much time, but how to manage and monitor your trade waste or how to implement systems that are going to appease the regulators going forward. There's energy, there's water management guides. That's another great industry guide. I mentioned B-Corp before because I know it. It's not the only thing, but it is a really useful starting point. It's a really useful framework. You can log in there for free. You can start to answer the questions and start to understand. It'll ask you questions you haven't even thought of. Does your company have metrics for this? Do you have processes and systems in place for this? What's your highest to lowest employee pay ratio? All of these things that maybe you don't care about some of them, maybe you do, right? So it's a really good place to start to uncover what you might really care about, even if you don't have an intention to certify. Or you can email me. So this is something that I do on the side. I'm not a big consultancy. So if you want to get a full end-to-end life cycle analysis, that's not for me. But if you want to just kind of start to develop a strategy and a plan and program, then I can be a bit of an outsourced team member, and that's kind of what I do a little bit. So a bit of a shameless plug there. But that's my website and email address.
And don't forget, you can also, there have probably been people that have done brewery tours in the last few days, but come and see other breweries, see what they're doing, ask questions. We welcome people to come and visit our site and our manufacturing facility. We love to show what we're doing with our trade waste, with our recycling, with our energy consumption, with our data monitoring. Like, the more we can share the knowledge that we've learned after many years of experimenting and researching, we'll impart that as much as we can. So don't feel free to reach out. Feel free to reach out at any point in time. Feel free. We will share what we know, definitely.
All right. I think that's us. Do we have any questions from the audience or comments?
Gents, can you think of any really no-brainer, like elimination options, short of applying or implementing new technology, new services and such? Are there any elimination options you've experienced that seem like no-brainers that you hadn't thought of previous to seeing it in practice?
So, as in, what can we just stop doing tomorrow that will have a positive impact?
Leaving lights on. It's a simple one, but you make it part of your culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a generalist question, and it really depends on what part of your business you're considering. For me, it's less about what do we stop doing and what do we start doing. So, and that can even be at a small level. So, I find that positive actions create a lot more momentum than trying to necessarily avoid negative ones. You know, I think sustainability of old was how do we be less bad? You know, and we see that with a lot of businesses out there. It's like, look, we're using a bit less than our competitors, or look, we've decreased our use of this bad thing by a little bit. Whereas I think the companies that are really leading the way, and that doesn't necessarily have to be big, amazing actions. It can just be leading the way in terms of their intent is, well, these are the positive outcomes we're trying to contribute to. So if it's around electricity and energy use, maybe we're going to start measuring it, and we're going to start reporting on that internally every month or quarter. And that can even be through just logging our bills, or, you know, going out there with a bucket and a stopwatch and measuring how much that piece of equipment, how much water that piece of equipment uses. Incredibly accurate. So just, I would say, what can you just start doing as a small step is really valuable and can build a lot more momentum.
In recent times, there's been a few examples of, I think, companies doing the wrong thing that are in either recycling and sustainability, which has caused a bit of distrust, like the red cycle collapses, an example, things like that. Is there a way to, is there anything to look for when partnering with, say, those companies that hold sustainability initiatives like waste collection and things? So, what do you sort of look for that they are doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Do site visits. For example, we engage with JJ Richards for our waste collection. Go and visit their MRF. They tell me that their commingle is 100% recycled. Go and see that they actually do it. They are held accountable by the government bodies to make sure that they're actually doing what they say they do. But yeah, go and have a discussion with them. Tee up a meeting. Actually see the trucks driving in, dropping it off. See it being sorted. See it with your own eyes. Then you'll believe it yourself. And then you can know that when they pick up, that's what's actually happening with your product. Yep.
And I think there's a piece as well, again, it comes back to that intentionality and why. And sometimes it may be not the clearest of answers, but when you start discussing these initiatives and ideas with other businesses or suppliers or customers, you can start to get an understanding. You can start to get a feeling of who actually cares versus who's ticking a box and say, oh, yeah, we do this, we have a plan for this, yet here it is, versus they're actually engaged and care, right? So I've got an example of that is, so we'll use waste as an example. Yeah, there are a few really big waste companies in this country, and, you know, waste and recycling infrastructure is critical and we need more in this country. So I'm not going to bag what they do, but when I was working for Stone & Wood in Murwillumbah, we started just trialling this other local guy who had a vac truck to start to take some of our kind of spent yeast and compost it just as a trial. And we didn't need to do that. It was no benefit to us really, but I could tell that he really cared and he was trying to do something, and he actually genuinely was willing to partner. The intent was there. That relationship built over the years such that now, 10 years later or whatever it is, he's got his own fully fledged business that is not dependent on Stone & Wood anymore. He serves a whole bunch of other businesses in that local region. He's got his own commercial composting facility. He's giving back to the local region through, you know, his compost is going on farms. And it's like, you could just tell that the intent was there to want to contribute. Perhaps that can be through, if you've got existing suppliers or you're speaking with new suppliers, perhaps that can be through that can be a line item or a discussion point as supplier negotiation, or, you know, even supplier reviews. It's like, just keep putting it on the radar, on the agenda, and keep talking about it. And if you're not getting any traction, start finding someone else who's interested.
Just on that point with the red cycle collapse that occurred, there's a great exhibitor out in the expo called Bear Hug. So they've replaced the need for plastic on pallets and kegs with a material solution that's completely recyclable and can be reused thousands and thousands of times. Now, they're a startup, but they're the sort of companies that need our support and can help tackle some of these really big global plastic problems that we have at the moment. So yeah, look out for them, reach out, support them where you can, and just keep your eyes peeled for new solutions in the market.
All right, I think we're there for time. Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate you coming along. Thank you.